Greetings, BUSN1360 Software Apps for Business. So today we start into Excel Chapter 3, which is really about visualizing the data that we have collected. And Excel is a great tool for organizing data, oftentimes large quantities of data. But when we have lots of rows or columns of data, sometimes it gets hard for us to picture in our minds what's actually going on. So what we're going to learn in this chapter is all the different visualizations or charts that Excel can make for us to visualize that data. Maybe if you see this pie chart that I have over here, maybe 44% of our revenue comes from one particular client. And if this was all listed out in a table, that'd be very hard to understand. Maybe we did well in one year and then we dropped back down in another year, and our accounts are going up and down. Well, we would certainly want to understand that, and we would want to understand not just every individual data point, but we would want to understand in general, is it rising or is it falling? It can fall a little bit, but we're still overall up, right? And so that's a good thing to know. One of the things that we'll explore that may be something new to you, you may have seen some of these charts before, is something called sparklines. And sparklines are a great management tool. You can use sparklines to look at, in this case 2 years of data, but maybe it's 10 years of data. And so if you can see, this word says Atlanta, and just for Atlanta we're looking across and we can see if our data is overall rising, if in the case of this next line, Chicago, if there's a dip and then it rises. But at a very quick glance, we can see what's happening with our data. Now, could we just look at the numbers and try to make those decisions? We could. It would take a little bit more scrutiny, take a little bit more mental process, and so we definitely want to use these visualization tools that Excel has to offer. So before we begin, I first of all want to point out why you may be seeing kind of a mouse down here in the corner and you see this link down below. Well, today, let me start at the top of the slide and say today we're going to go through these steps in Excel 365. This is the version that we're teaching in the class, and this is the information that I want to provide. But sometimes at home, like me, you have an older version of Excel. And before I was able to, during COVID, get all my systems up to date so that I could teach using Excel 365, I created the video in Excel 2016. So I don't have a link like this for all of these greater assignments. I do happen to have it for this one, and I understand that some of you may be using older equipment, and so for this particular situation, I'm going to list that link. So I'm going to try to put it in the comments so that it's clickable for you. The second thing that I want to explain before we start into this assignment is that this is a long assignment, and we're going to look at a lot of different charts and a lot of different things that Excel can do to a chart. There is so much formatting that you can do, and there's so much additional visualization. Just as I look at this picture of a chart, I see something we're probably all used to. We have a y-axis over here with some values. We have what Excel would call a category axis along the bottom with some other values, and that's kind of typical, right? We have our X and Y axes, and we learn that in math class. Well, sometimes we can have two axes on a graph because we're trying to consolidate and really kind of display two graphs or two charts at the same time. Speaking of that, instead of having a line chart over here, we might impose that line on top of these columns. There's all kinds of things that we can do, and that's what we're going to explore. You saw that in the simulator. You've seen it in your text. You were asked some questions about those types of things in your chapter quiz, and now we're going to do the hands-on work. But here's what I want you to understand. As you go through this, I thoroughly expect that you will have to pause and look some things up. When I don't do these functions all the time, I have to sometimes go and look things up. I think that's true for all of us in all the different software programs that we use. But here's the reason that you go through this. If you do not know that spark lines exist, then you cannot say, hey, I need to look this up because this would be a great tool for me to use. I can't remember how to do a spark line, but I can go look it up because I know that it exists, and I know that I can leverage it to be even, a brighter star at work, or to manage my small business even better than I have been doing. So that's why we go through these exercises, is because we want to have that knowledge so that later on we can brush up on it if we need to, we can look something up if we need to, but we know that it exists and we know that we've done it once before. So that's kind of the purpose, and I say that because I don't want you to be overwhelmed. All right? Let's get started. Now, I've already logged into my IT lab, and I've taken the liberty of downloading the files. And just to briefly look at those, we've got our Excel file that we're going to work on. We have a picture. We have instructions, and then we have something called slice. Now, on my computer, I've changed some of the settings so that I can actually see what's called the extension, in this case .thmx. You probably don't see that on your computer. You probably don't see, for the instructions file, .docx. You may not see this .jpg. You can, however, if you look across under type, you can see what kinds of files these are. So why do we want to know that? Well, it just gives us a little idea of what's coming. So here it says that Slice is a Microsoft Office theme. So if we don't already have this theme on our computer, they have provided it, the MyIT Lab has provided it as part of the exercise so that we make sure that we're applying the correct theme. Okay? I like the picture file as well, and I've already opened that, so I'd like to go ahead and share that with you, because a picture truly is worth 1,000 words. Now, the first thing I want to point out is that I'm looking at the bottom of this picture. There are multiple tabs in this workbook. We would say there are multiple worksheets in the workbook. Okay, so each tab is a worksheet. The tab that is kind of dominant here is the passenger tab. So I don't have a picture of every single tab, but probably the book publisher has come to realize that students get a little confused perhaps in understanding what is intended on this passenger tab. So for example, this gradient color here, this picture really helps me to understand that it starts out light up at the top and it gets a little darker as it goes down. Also, as I look at this graph, it helps me to see how many years I have, and even the spark lines that we just looked at and how they're going to look. I mean, it just gives me a nice overview of what's going on. So it's a good picture. I appreciate that they have provided it, but be aware it's not for every single tab. I even like that I can see this legend across the bottom. All right. I've already opened the instructions, and they tell us a little bit about what's going on. As an analyst of the airline industry, we're tracking the number of passengers for these top 6 major U.S. airports, and they list them there. And it might be helpful for you to read that so that you understand, what's our intention here? What are we trying to accomplish? So as usual, we're going to jump in and get started here. It tells us to start Excel, to download the files, and that the grader has automatically added our name to that file. So we've basically completed step 1. In step 2, it says you want to create a clustered column chart to depict the passenger counts at the 6 airports over several years. Use quick analysis to create a clustered column chart, and it tells us the cells, okay, and cut the chart and paste it to cell A15. So when we're working with these charts, we're going to be really specific, and these words all have a lot of meaning. As usual, I've printed my instructions, and so I'm going to be referencing those as we work. I have already opened the Excel spreadsheet, and I need to make sure I'm on the Passenger tab. That's my first tab, so make sure we're starting there. It says that I'm going to use a quick analysis to create a chart, and then they tell me the cells that I need to select. But in Excel, we always begin by selecting. Remember, what is selected will be affected, so we have to start by selecting. I'm going to click in cell A4, and I need to drag all the way over here to cell L10. Well, from past videos, hopefully you know that I can click in the first cell, I can hold my Shift key down, and then simply click in the last cell. Then I'm going to release the Shift key. And notice how everything is selected. So remember also, it said select A4 through L10, and A4 is selected. I can tell because the green border goes across. I can also tell because column A, the label has a little shading up here, the A, and 4 has a little shading on it. So I know that that is selected. With that selected, now I begin my steps. It said to use quick analysis, and that's this little button down here. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to go to charts, and let me just make sure, clustered column chart. So here that is right here. I'm going to click that. And Excel just kind of plops it onto the worksheet. And if you'll notice, it's even covering part of our table. It's not in a cell. And that's an important thing to understand. This is an object that floats above the data on the worksheet. Okay, now I have it selected, and there's things I need to emphasize to you that will make you a success, and these are really important things. When you look at this chart, I want you to notice that there are 9 dots, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 dots, right? 8 dots. There's nothing in the middle. 8 dots. That means it's selected. When it's selected, do you notice along the top that my chart design, my menu changes and I have chart design? I also have format, and that format is after chart design, so it's talking about chart design. If I simply click in my worksheet, do you notice that chart design goes away? My menu kind of returns to me, and the dots are no longer around the chart. That's really important, and I'm going to tell you why. Let's say, I don't know, sometimes my finger flinches or my hand flinches, and let's say that when I click on the chart, you see that I clicked it one time, and you see the dots, meaning it's selected. But let's say my hand flinched, my finger flinched, and I accidentally clicked again. Maybe I was just trying to be just really certain that I selected the chart. Do you see what happened? I have more dots. Not only do I have the dots that are going around the outside of the chart, I've got dots, in this case, around the chart title. So this is an object. It's floating above the worksheet. When I click on the object one time, I select the object. When I click again, even if there's been a pause between the first click and the second click, when I click again, I start to select things that are inside the chart. Now we're going to use that, but we need to be aware that that's what's going on. So for example, I might click over here on the side and I end up selecting this value axis. If I click down below, I'm selecting the legend, right? I'm going to really, if you can kind of zoom in tight here, what if I select that blue bar? Did you notice that there are dots on every single blue data bar? All of those bars are selected. If I accidentally clicked again, look how I'm drilling down. Instead of selecting all of those bars, now I've selected the one bar. So clicking is selecting deep into the graph, and we have to just be aware of that. It's nothing to be afraid of. We just have to be aware of it. So what happens if I didn't want that? That was not at all my intention. You will hear me often say, click away somewhere, and what I mean is to find a safe empty space. Sometimes it might be just an empty space on the graph, but oftentimes it's going to be click into the worksheet so that I do not have the graph selected anymore, the chart selected anymore, and then I can just simply come back over and click one time so that I have it selected. Another thing that you'll notice, again very important, is when I clicked away, oops, and then I come back, do you see how I'm deliberately targeting some of the empty space in this chart? I don't even tempt fate by clicking here, because that was only one click, but it drilled down and selected the chart title. It selected the graph, but it also selected the chart title. So I have to be careful of that because I don't want Excel to try to interpret what I was intending to do. So when I click away someplace, and then when I want to click the chart again, I want to go to some safe empty space, something where there's no data, and I don't want to get too close up in here. I want to be more towards the edge so that I can click and safely select my chart object. Okay, a lot of explanation, but that's really going to be helpful. All right, I think that we have finished that step. Oh no, we haven't. I'm sorry. We have the chart selected, and I need to cut, and I'm going to paste that. It said into cell A15. Now, it actually doesn't go into the cell. It's just going to position it in that area. That's okay, as long as we understand. So I paste it. Okay, and you see how it's now nicely at cell A15? Okay, save that because I think we just finished step number 2. Let's go back to our instructions, and I'll make these a little bit bigger. Let's go to step number 3. It says you want to customize this column chart with a chart title, display the years as a data series, and enlarge the chart to be easier to read, and apply a chart style. So here are those 4 things, and they're going to tell us exactly what to do. This is going to be our chart title. Oh, they're having us swap the data categories, okay, because they say display the years as the data series. And then they're telling us to set the height and width, and here's the style that we're going to apply. Well, rather than read those, let's just go back to the Excel spreadsheet and let's get started. We're just going to do it. It said to change the chart title. So the way that we're going to do that is the chart is already selected. I've got the dots around it. I'm going to move my mouse directly over chart title and I'm going to click. When I do that, now different things may happen, and I'm going to scroll up a little bit. Different things can happen. You may have a formula type bar open up above, okay? They did that in the simulator, and that does happen. But oftentimes, if we just simply click, or sometimes double click, or if I can triple click, I like double triple click, you know, in that chart title. Do you see how the words chart title are selected? Okay, that means that I'm editing in that box. And if you remember my detailed discussion on that changing mouse arrow, what we did is we've got our insertion point in that box. With that selected, I'm just going to start typing. It's going to delete what's there and it's going to replace it with what I'm typing. So I'm going to type passengers by top. You see how it's entering it into that box? Oops, top U.S. airports. Okay, now I'm not going to hit enter because I'm actually typing in this object, in the chart title object. If you are typing in the formula bar, if that opened up on your computer, then you do need to hit enter to complete that step. Alright, I'm going to save that just to kind of make sure that that's set up. You can even click away just to make sure that it's set up and that that's no longer selected, and then I'm going to click the chart again. It tells me to swap the data on the category axis and in the legend. So you see the legend seems to be a listing of our airports, and the data, and in the legend, I think the data they're talking about is the years down here, 2006 through 2016. So with my chart selected, remember that that brings the chart design menu, and if you have to, go ahead and select chart design. and then over here switch the row and column. So I'm going to click on that. So it took what was along this bottom axis, which was the category axis, and it turned that into the legend. And it took my airports and it made them the categories. So for the category of the Atlanta airport, now all of my data is grouped. And you see how that works for each one going across? All right. I still have my chart selected. The dots are still along the outside, no dots deeper in the chart, and they want me to adjust the height and width. So I'm going to click on Format. Now that format is to the right of chart design, and that indicates to you that we're formatting the chart. With that, way over here on the right side, here's where we do size, and it's this. Let's see, the height is 3.5. And hit enter, and the width is 11.4. And I'm going to press enter again on my keyboard. Ooh, that looks a little better. It's starting to spread that data out a little bit. I'm going to save that because I think that's good, but we're not quite done yet. They want us to apply a style to the chart, and specifically style 7. Well, when my chart is selected, I get some extra tools that pop up over here. And this paintbrush tool, this is where I can find styles, and you can see color as well, but I'm on styles, and when they say 7, it really should be the 7th one. 4, 5, 6, 7. Is it this one? When you hover over it, you get a little tooltip. If you can see that, if you can see that tooltip, and that tells me that that is style number 7. So I'm going to select that, and you can see on my screen what that should look like. These boxes stay open until you push that button again. So I'm going to do that to close it, and I'm going to save. All right, let's go back. I think we just finished step number 3. Let's look at step number 4. The value axis takes up a lot of space for the numbers. You will adjust the value axis to simplify it. So we're going to change the units to millions for the value axis, and we're going to edit the axis title to let people know millions of passengers. So if they see 3 passengers, they know it's not actually 3, it's 3 millions of passengers. So let's go back to the spreadsheet. This is what they're talking about when they say the value axis. It's this one over here, which you might think of as your y-axis, and they want us to select that. And with that selected, let's see, we're going to change the unit. So I'm going, I've told you I am a big right clicker. That's what I like to do, is right click. So I right clicked right on top of that value axis, and down here towards the bottom it says Format Axis. And there we go. Now, within this panel, you have to be careful because you have what I kind of think of as sub-panels. You have this icon over here, which they call the axis options. This one, size and property, effects, and fill and line. So if you don't see immediately what you're looking for in this side panel, you may want to explore some of these other again, I call them kind of sub panels that are within that. But we do want to be on this axis option, and we want to change the values, the display units. So it's right down here, display units and millions. And as soon as I did that, if you look over here, did you see the numbers change? And it also added just a little bitty phrase right there, millions, because they know that we need to convey that, so they're helping us to go ahead and convey that. But they do want us to edit that, so I'm going to click that. See how things within the chart are clickable? So I've clicked on that, and I'm going to double click. Okay, now that I've double clicked, you can see that my insertion point is flashing inside of there. Maybe I could have double clicked in a more appropriate place, but what I'm going to do, what I like to do, it's not letting me do, is to arrow. There we go. Well, I wanted to arrow to the end so I could just type millions of passengers, but I kind of accidentally triple clicked it. So with it all selected, I'm just going to go ahead and type millions of passengers. See how it's in there? A little weird when you're typing sideways like that. I'm going to save that because that's exactly what I want, and we're at the end of step 4. So far so good. Now I'm going to tell you something. This is perhaps a nervous tick that I have. I just don't like leaving my cursor flashing inside these inner objects of the chart. So perhaps by force of habit, I tend to click away somewhere, some blank cell, and then I'll come back and select my chart again, just so that I kind of know where I'm at and I see the finished results of typing in something like millions of passengers. But let's go back to the instructions because I believe we're done with step 4. Let me scroll this up a little bit. It says you want to focus on the 2016 data series by adding data labels. Display data labels above the columns for the 2016 data series only. Okay, so not all the data, just the 2016 data series. So let's go back to our Excel spreadsheet. Now, which one is the 2016 data? Well, my legend is down here at the bottom. See it there? I clicked and it selected the entire legend. I clicked again, it selected 2016. That's fine. What I wanted you to see was that it's this dark blue label. If you are colorblind, if you're struggling with that color, what you can also do is hover your mouse over any one of the data bars and it will tell you. So as I hover over this particular data bar, it's telling me that the series 2016, that's the series, it's the 2016 data. If I instead pick something in the middle, it tells me it's 2011. They are ordered sequentially, so you'll know. Now, of course, I have a lot of data points for 2016. I have one for each airport, right? If I click any one of those data bars for 2016, what I want to do is I just want to kind of look. I clicked it for Atlanta, but when I look at Chicago, I see the dots. For Los Angeles, I see the dots around 2016. See that? For each of those 2016 data points, the dots are around it, and that means that it's selected. Now, with that selected, there's probably multiple ways to go in here. I think you can just simply go to Chart Elements and Data Labels. Okay, now I have not clicked anything yet. I'm just hovering over. But if you will look at the chart, you will see that for the 2016 columns only, the data label is already displaying. So when I selected first, that put me on the right path. So the key is always to start by selecting what you need. So I'm going to check that data labels box, and I'm going to save that. Like I said, whenever I think I've done good work. And always forget, you have to click this plus sign to close that up again, just to kind of put that up. Okay, that was step number 5. I'm going to go back to the instructions. All right, let's go on to step number 6. Applying a fill color to the chart area will make the chart visually appealing. Apply light gradient, accent 2, preset, gradient fill to the chart. These colors are always so long, right? Okay, the first thing they're telling us is that we're going to apply this color to the chart area, and that tells me I need to select the chart area. Then I'll worry about this light gradient, accent 2, preset, gradient fill. Okay, so let's go back to Excel. In my chart, as I start to move in, and see, it bothers me that I have those selected, so I'm going to click away. And then I'm going to click into a safe space. Now, when I did that, I should have paused. Do you see the tip near my mouse and it says chart area? I need to be careful because if I move here, notice that it says chart title. So it's telling me, this is what it's calling the plot area. This is where the data is actually plotted. Well, what did they want me to affect? They wanted me to affect the chart area. So when I see that tooltip telling me that that's the chart area, I'm going to click. And that's that whole outer area, right? Now they want me to start applying colors to that. So, I have two thoughts on this. Well, I'll go, I've got my chart area, format chart area panel open. You might notice that if I click on something else, let's say I click plot area, do you see that this side panel now says format the plot area? If I were to click one of my data bars, now it says format that data series. So it's changing based on what I've clicked on, and I need to be really aware of that, because sometimes you can change the wrong thing, or you say, wait, I know it was in that side panel, where did it go? Well, maybe you have something selected that is not what needs to be selected. Okay, so chart area is selected, my format chart area is the name of my side panel, and my fill bucket is this very first option, and that's what they want me preset fill to the chart area. So I'm going to expand fill by clicking that little triangle, and it said to apply a light gradient, so I need some kind of gradient preset. It's one of these presets. Okay, that's light gradient accent 1. This is light gradient accent 2. So I'm going to pick that. Oh, look at that. Isn't this what our picture kind of looked like? I think it was. I'm going to switch to the picture. This is the picture. So we're getting there. We're not quite there, but this is that passenger, and we're starting to get our information. I'm going to save that, and I think we just finished step 6. And we even double checked by looking at the picture. Let's go on to step 7. I'm going to move this up a little bit. A best practice, it says, is to add alt text to a chart for accessibility compliance, and that's an excellent idea. So it's telling us to add the alt text, and they tell us this long sentence here. Now, in another video, I mentioned to you that you really have to be careful that you type every word correctly, that you include the punctuation, and for me, I get to talking so much that sometimes I type something different than what's there. So I'm going to copy this. Now, if I were to paste this directly into the alt text, my concern is that the formatting would copy with it. And so in a previous video, I told you about a little program that's on all Windows computers, and it's called Notepad. And this is a text editor. And we talked about this previously, but a text editor strips all formatting. It strips margins, it strips the font, it strips the color of the font. It just says, give me the raw text. So if I paste, there it is. Now, what I need to do is make sure that I'm not going to paste this, so I need to copy, right? I pasted it to strip out all the formatting. Now I'm going to copy it again. If you are more comfortable simply typing it, that's what you do. Okay, I'm just throwing in a few extras as we go. The goal here is to type this in as alternative text. What that means is if somebody cannot see our chart, they're going to instead hear through their screen reader, they're going to hear what the chart displays. So my chart is selected, and I am a right clicker. So I'm going to right click, and I'm going to find Edit Alt Text. Now, if you are using an older version of Excel, you may not see this in your right click menu. So remember, I have another video. In this particular case, we'll not always have other videos for you showing older versions, but you may want to follow that one. When I clicked Edit Alt Text, my side panel changed, and it says, how would you describe this object and its content to someone who is blind? Or you're listening to something, that's reading this report to you. Well, they gave us the verbiage. I told you how I copy and pasted it, but if you want to type it in there, that's exactly what you should do. Now, I've got that in there now. I'm just going to click away someplace just to make sure. But if I click back on the chart, it's in there. All right, I'm going to save that. Let's go back to our instructions. Step number 8. When you change the workbook theme, Excel applies that theme to the chart styles. Change the workbook theme to slice. Now, do you remember that they gave us the slice theme as we talked about at the beginning of the video? That was one of the files we downloaded. So just in case we don't have that on the computer, we can use it, we can get it because they provided it. So let's go back to our Excel workbook. So my chart is still selected. You know, it might be okay, but I want to make sure that I'm not working with just my chart. So I'm going to click away to the spreadsheet, because remember, when we apply a theme, it applies to the entire worksheet, really, as we just read. So where do I apply themes? Well, across the top here under page layout, you see my themes button, right? Just to kind of for demonstration purposes, if I still had my chart selected, it looks like themes is still available. Notice some of the other things are grayed out, but I want to make really crystal clear to Excel that this theme is for the entire worksheet. So I've clicked off of my chart. I'm going to go up here to themes, and I'm going to click the drop down box, and as I look through, you see, as I hover my mouse over all these themes, it changes. And the first thing I want to point out to you is that they are not in alphabetical order. So I have WISP, for example, up here. Then I have, you know, Damask and Dividend, Damask. How do you say that? So I want to look through. I do not see Slice. Okay. So maybe this is a corporate theme, and I've gotten this from my marketing people, and they said, look, you know, anytime you go out and present data, we want you to use our theme. Okay, well, they've provided it, so I need to browse for themes. Now at this point, of course, you need to know, where did you save your files? And I always put them on my flash drive. You see, I've got everything organized into folders, and if you don't, you really want to think about doing that. Here's my Excel 3 folder, and I'm going to open that, and there is Slice, and I'm going to open that. Ah, look at that purple color. Before it was kind of an orangey color, and that didn't really look like the picture, but now that we've applied that theme, the theme updated things so that, you know, the color is now exactly what it looked like in that picture. So hey, how about that? We are making progress. I'm going to save. So on to step 9. Step 9 says you want to create a bar chart to display passenger counts for only 1 year. So we're going to create a recommended clustered bar chart for these particular cells. Now notice that these are 2 ranges, and that these ranges are not side by side. So we're not going to be able to pick one cell and go to the other. And hopefully you've kind of been reading and experimenting and seeing how to select what's called non-adjacent ranges. And so we're going to do that. And once we create that recommended clustered bar chart using these 2 sets of data, we're going to move that chart to a chart named bar chart. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to go back to my Excel spreadsheet, and let's first go over to cell A5 through A10. So I'm going to select that. Now, I need to make sure that I can come over here and see cells A5, or I'm sorry, cells L5 through L10. I've already got these selected. I haven't clicked anything. If you did click to move over, you need to make sure you go back and select so that you have this selected. Remember, A5, even though it's not that kind of shaded color, it's still selected, and I can see that based on the row shade and the label shade. So A5 through L10, hold your Control key down on your keyboard and select L5 through L10. Okay, now remember, just because now that's shaded over here, but cell L5 doesn't appear to have that coloring on it, that little purpley kind of coloring. That's okay. I know that I selected it. I know that it's part of what I clicked and drug over. Now this is where your mouse skills can be important, because if you hesitate sometime, or if you lift and you didn't fully hold the control key down, you may not have selected what you intended. That's okay. You just want to do it with a little confidence, with a little authority. You're going to press and drag, lift up. Now press the control key down. No mouse buttons are held down. In fact, I don't have to hold anything down. But press that control key down. With that control key held down, keeping it down, press and drag. Okay? Now I can let up off the control key. Don't have the mouse. I have those two data ranges selected. With that selected, it said that it wants me to create a recommended clustered bar chart. So I'm going to go to Insert. Here's Recommended Charts. I'm going to click on that. And it said a bar chart. And columns go up and down. Bars come from the side. Okay? And that, sure enough, this first one, it says that this is a clustered bar. And that looks like the one that is recommended. Does that look recommended to you? So I'm going to click OK. That object is now sitting on top of my worksheet. In fact, it's on top of another chart. That's okay. This object is the top object. They're layered on top of there, and this one is on top. Now it is kind of cluttered, and so the last part of that step 9 instruction says that we should move the chart to create a chart named bar chart. Okay, well, it's selected. You see the dots are around it, and on my chart design ribbon, the very last button, Move Chart. They said they want it on a new sheet, and that new sheet should be named Bar Chart. Click OK. I now have an additional tab, and if I were to look back at the Passenger tab, you see that it's gone, and I'm over here on the bar chart, right? Okay, that is the end of page 1. Moving on to page 2, let's go back to our instructions and look at page 10. So it says you want to customize the bar chart, change the chart color palette to palette 3, enter a chart title, apply the style 5 chart style, and then we're going to add this alternate text. So I'm going to go back, let's do that, back to Excel, and I have my chart selected. I still see the dots around it, and that is, by the way, the entire tab. There's no spreadsheet, underneath this. This is the entire tab. I'm going to go up to Change Colors. This is my color palette, and they're colorful, there's monochromatic, there's all kinds of colors that I can work with, but under the colorful palette, they wanted me to pick the third one, Colorful Palette 3. I'm going to pick that, and that makes it this kind of beautiful purpley color. Now they want me to click this chart title, and if I can triple click in there to select, I'm just selecting it, or you could select it however you want to select it. I'm going to type the title that they asked, Passengers at Top 6 U.S. Airports. Watch your spelling, watch your punctuation in 2016. Once you get that typed in there, now I am typing in the actual title box. I like to click away someplace to make sure that it's set up in there. I can look at it a little more easily, check my punctuation, my capitalization, all that. Now, let's see, I want my chart selected again, because what they want me to do now is to apply a style to it. That's under this paintbrush. And they want me to apply style 5. Should be the 5th one down. When you hover your mouse over it, you should see a little tip that comes up that's style 5. Got it. I'm going to click away just so I can see it. And finally, they say to add alt text. Now I'm just going to type it in this time. I need to right click anywhere on the chart area. So, if you're down too low, you'll be in the plot area. You want to avoid the title and, things like these lines. Get in kind of a safe empty space. Right click, edit, alt text. And here I can just go ahead and type. The bar chart shows passengers at top 6 U.S. airports in 2016. Now, what is alt text? Atlanta, let me go ahead and type. Atlanta had the most passengers. And I see a capitalization problem there. We tend to think of alt text, it's short for alternate text, as the text that someone using a screen reader, such as a blind person, would hear. And that's true. Instead of seeing this graph, their screen reader would read this alternative text that you've provided. But it's so much more provides so much more service than that, because oftentimes today we are listening to books that are read to us, through apps on our cell phones, like an Audible book, something like that. We have e-readers so that we can sit on trains and buses and subways and have our earbuds in and just listen without having to fool with papers that we're paging through. So if you are using a reader for any of those reasons, which many people do, then when it gets to this chart, it would simply say the chart shows passengers, and so you're providing that so that the person listening knows there's a chart and knows the information that's contained within that chart. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. And I believe that finished step 10 and on to step 11. Step 11 says to modify the axes, the axes will improve the readability of the bar chart. So we're going to change the font size to 10 for the category axis as well as the value axis, and we're going to change the value axis maximum to 1.1 E8. Now, do you know what that means? What that E means is exponent. So it actually means 1.1 to the 10 to the 8th power times 10 to the 8th power. You say, oh my goodness, that's math. That's math. No. Think of it this way. Your paycheck is so big that your hand gets tired of writing all those zeros. It's so big you can't fit all the zeros on that paycheck. So what you would instead do is you would write 1, 1, and you would know that there was, as in this case, 7 more zeros, because what you're doing is you're moving the decimal to the right 8 times. So you would move it over once. So you say, okay, that's from 8. Now I have 7 more to go. And you just fill in with zeros. So it'd be 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 7, 7 zeros, right? Because the paycheck is so big, you have to write all those zeros. So a shorthand for that is you just say, how far can I move that decimal over? Well, I'm just going to write 1.1, and I'm going to tell people, look, if you want to expand this number out, just move the decimal over 8 times. And that shorthand notation is 1.1 e to the 8th. Could be 1.7, it could be 3.2 e to the 8. It just means move the decimal over 8 times. Okay, so that's what that means. Let's put it into practice over here on our Excel spreadsheet. When I look down here at the bottom, see all these zeros? So I don't want to write 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. I don't want to write all that. And look, by the time we get to $120 million, so these are hundreds, right? These are thousands, and this is $120 million. And part of what they're telling us here is that we have a little extra white space in our chart, and I'd like to make it bigger. I don't need this chart to go all the way out to 120 because my data doesn't go out that far. So in our instructions, when they say to bind it, what they're saying is tell Excel don't go to 120 million. Instead, looks like 110, right? So this would be 1.2 e to the 8, we're just going to go to 1.1. So we're going to, smush that down just a little bit. But they wanted us to begin by changing the font size. So down here at the bottom, I clicked to select that, and I'm going to come up here, and they said change that to 10. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click these labels, and I'm going to change that to 10. And okay, I'm sorry, I had to think for a minute. And then I need to change basically the binding on this part here. So when I select this, I'm used to this right panel over here changing automatically for me, and it's not. The only thing it's telling me is I can move, resize, close. It's not reflecting. It's just focused on the alternate text very specifically for this for whatever I've got selected. It's saying, do you want the alt text for that? No, I need a different side panel. So I'm going to close that side panel. I just don't need it anymore. And the trick here is to right click on top of what you want to format, right? That's tricky. I'm going to tell you honestly that's tricky. But if you get the wrong thing, it's okay, because let's say if I right click on one of these bars are just really easy, right? So I can right click and click format. Now the side panel comes up to format data series, but we know that all we need to do is select what we are intending to format. In this case, the numbers at the bottom. So my point here is that when you right click, sometimes you can miss the mark a little bit. That's okay. You can still pick format from the menu that displays, but just make sure that you're formatting, that you then select what it is that you actually want to format. Okay? Okay, so let's see. So I've selected that. It says format the axis, and they want me to bind, it says change the value axis maximum bound. Well, remember you have these sub panels. So this is my fill bucket, and this is for special effects, and this has to do with sizing. This very last button is the axis options. And when I go to the axis options, I can see as I arrow down here, bounds. And I can bind the minimum, because maybe I don't want to start at 0. Nobody cares about the pennies. Nobody cares about $1 when I'm going all the way up to $100+ million. So I'm going to set the maximum to 1.1 E8. I'm just going to type it in there. If I hit my enter key, did you see my graph stretch just a little bit? So far so good, right? That's what we want. We want to save that, and then we're going to go on to the next step. So we finished that step. On to, what step are we on now? Number 12 says you will format a data point so that it stands out, and then add grid lines to enhance the readability in the bar chart. Okay, so we're going to format the Atlanta data point with dark blue text to fill color. And we're going to add primary minor vertical grid lines. Alrighty, well, let's go back to our Excel spreadsheet. We're going to select just the Atlanta data point. So be very careful here. Notice that the dots are around all of the bars, and we don't want that. We want only the Atlanta data point. So I had to click that one again, and when I did, notice that the dots are only around that one data bar. There's no dots on any of these others. Now with this selected, I'm going to go over here. My side panel is open. It says format data point. So I'm going to click my paint bucket, and they wanted dark blue text to fill color. Okay, well, it's going to be a solid. Well, let me see if I've got color right down here. And what was this one? That's dark blue. Now it does say dark blue text 2. Okay, up along, see, that one said black text 1. That's accent 1. Here we go. Dark blue, that's a text 2. Okay, that's the one they want. Under theme colors, I'm about the fourth one over, dark blue text 2. So I'm going to select that, change the color there. That looks good. I'm going to save that. That was part of what they wanted. But they also wanted us to add primary vertical grid lines. So if I go up here to the plus sign, they want grid lines, and when I hover my mouse over that, I'm going to see a little arrow here. I can click that arrow, and the ones that they wanted were primary, minor, vertical. Now, I don't know if you can see this in the video. I'm going to click this plus sign to close all this up. There are real lightly colored lines. Now, every fifth line is darker, and then they're light. If you think of it like a football field, they have the little tick marks so that you know the individual yards, but then they mark whatever 5 every 10 yards more heavily. Okay, same type thing here. When I'm just looking for, tens of thousands of dollars, I'm going to know that that's the darker colored lines. But if I really need to look at more detail, then those minor grid lines are lighter, and they're going to help me focus as I look. Alrighty, so minor grid lines are applied. The Atlanta data point has been given this pretty blue color to give it a little emphasis. Maybe we're the manager of the Atlanta airport and we want everybody to know how cool that is. So let's save that and let's go back to our instructions. On to step 13, lucky 13. A line chart effectively shows trends over time for the passenger counts at the different airports. Create a line chart using cells A4 through through L10, A4 through L10 in the passenger worksheet, and then move the chart to a chart sheet named line chart. Then we're going to add a title such as there, and we're going to bold that title. So lots of steps here. Let's start by changing to our passenger worksheet. So let's go back to Excel. I'm going to change to the passenger worksheet, and they told me to select from A4 all the way, now it's jumping around on me a little bit, that's okay, all the way over to L10. Now here's where I'm going to give you that reminder. If that worksheet is jumping around on you and it's making it hard for you to do your dragging and dropping, then start by clicking the first cell. Oh, in fact, I messed up because they said A4 and I clicked in A5. So I'm going to do it right this time. I'm going to click in cell A4, and instead of dragging, which is perfectly fine, I'm going to hold my shift key down and I'm going to click the end point, L10. Again, we've talked about this in past videos. It's just a little more precise. It gives me more control so that it doesn't get away from me as I'm dragging and dropping. So A4, click A4, hold your shift key down, and then click the last point, L10. With that selected, I've lost my place here. There we are. With that selected, we are going to create a line chart. So under Insert, we're going to go over to our charts. This looks like lines. And they didn't tell us any special kind of line chart, so I'm just going to use this very first basic line chart. There it is, all those different lines, and so we're going to move that. So the chart is selected, the dots are around it, it's an object floating on my worksheet, and with it selected, I'm confused because I'm looking for my chart things up here. Okay, I'm going to click away someplace, and I'm going to click my chart again. There it did. Sometimes if your computer has a little glitch like that, and mine is running so much software with recording that sometimes the memory starts to have a little problem. So what I do, I said, hey, wake up computer, and the way I did that is I clicked away someplace and then I clicked back to my chart, and when I did that I got what I needed, which is this chart design ribbon, and on the chart design ribbon it says move chart. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to tell it that I want a new sheet, and that new sheet they said to call line chart, and I'm going to click OK. Now that I have another tab down here, line chart, and here it is, they said add a chart title, so I'm going to click into the chart title. If I can triple click, that'll select all. Well, I've got part of it. I'll just use my delete key. And I'm going to type passengers at U.S. airports 2006 through 2016. Very good. Now, I do need to bold it, so I can click away and then click it again. When I did that, it saves me the extra step of having to select all that text inside the title. Instead, I've got the dots around the chart title, meaning the chart title is selected. And if that entire box is selected, then when I bold, it will bold everything inside the chart title box. Save that. Let's go back to the instructions. On to step 14. You want to customize the line chart. So set the minimum bound, and remember we talked about this exponent 4.0 e to the 7. That means move that decimal point to the right 7 times. So we're going to set that as the minimum bound. The maximum bound should change to 1.1 e to the 8 automatically. Let's see, then we're going to set some, well, why don't we start with that and we'll go through the rest of these steps piece by piece. So back to Excel, and with our line chart they want us to change the value axis. Now where are the values? These are the values, so I'm going to select those, right? And over here, if you remember these submenus, remember when we changed the bounds before, we went all the way to this button, Axis Options. Under Axis Options, here's our bounds. We have minimums and maximums. They told us to change the minimum and watch the maximum also change. So for the minimum, 4.0 e to the 7. Now the minimum, look at the bottom, we have all this white space because we don't have anything at 20 million and we don't have anything at 40 million. So we really don't need to display that as part of the graph. So I'm going to hit the enter key. It changed my starting value, which gave my lines more space to move out. And then it said that when we did that, the maximum should change to 1.1 E8, and that's exactly where it is, right? So that's $110 million, okay? Woo, or passengers, I'm sorry. So that would be great. But do you see how changing that minimum bound got rid of some of that empty space? Earlier we changed the maximum bound. That got rid of some of the empty space. So that's good. Let's save that. That's just really part of it. The next thing it tells us to do is to set the vertical value axis units to display in millions, okay? So then they want us to delete the vertical value axis display units label from the upper left corner of the chart and add a value axis title that says in millions. Oh, okay. So we don't, we've talked about all these zeros. That's just cluttering. They don't really add anything. They're cluttering. So what we can do is, like we did on the previous graph, display units, and this time millions, right? So pretty cool. But instead of having this little bitty note here, millions, which they had us change last time, they said delete that unit label. So that's what we're doing. And instead, we're going to add our own value axis. So whenever we add something, we go to the plus button. We're going to add an axis title, and we're going to add it for the vertical. Okay, so see how it's kind of a little more prominent, and there it is right there. And they want us to simply type in millions. Now, I took a little different approach. This little box is selected, and I typed in millions, and now I'm going to press enter. And that updated that. Alternatively, I could have clicked, double click, triple click inside that box to type what I wanted to type. So multiple approaches. I'm going to click away just so I can see the difference. And my graph is really starting to look good. The next thing that they want me to do is they want me to change the font size for the value axis and the category axis. So we just worked on the value axis, and it says that this is already 10. Let me make sure that I have my value axis selected. So I think we're looking at this. So see the numbers? Instead of 9, let's change that to 10. And for the category, see the years down here? And we're going to change that to 10. Save that. Next, they want us to move the legend. The legend down here tells us which of the bar or the lines are which, and instead of having that at the bottom, they want us to move that to the top. So when we look over at our side panel, we need to make sure, you might be on this fill bucket, we need to make sure that we change to this very last sub menu. These can be kind of tricky sometimes. You got to look under all of them. And you could try dragging this object around, but much easier, just pick this and click top. And see how it moved it? And you also get to see your different options. So it moved our graph down, it centered it up here, it looks nice. We're going to save that. We have a couple more steps inside. Step 14 is a very big step. It says filter the chart by deselecting the odd number years. Well, when you think filter, you may want to think about this funnel. And when you look at the funnel, you see series, you see category, and if I scroll down, what they're asking us is to deselect the odd number years. And what that's going to do is it's just going to remove some of these data points once you have only the even years selected. Apply, and then you can close that. So see how down at the bottom there's just less clutter because you're not displaying the data points. And when you think about it, a line is a connection between 2 points. So you might be removing some of the nuances of the line, but the general trend is still there. You're still seeing we've had a little peak and a little valley. You're just not quite as detailed because you're filtering out those data points. All right, last step is that we're going to add alt text, and of course if I right click in the chart area, I'm going to look for edit alt text, and in this dialog box the line displays trends for top 6 U.S. airports from 2006 to 2016 at 2-year intervals. Okay. I like to click away just to make sure. You click back, you see that it's still there, save. Very good. Moving right along, we're already at step 15. Spark lines. You're going to like these. Spark lines provide a simple visualization to represent data in a worksheet. Display the passenger worksheet and insert line spark lines, which is a type of spark lines, in the range M5 to M10 to illustrate the data in B5 through L10. Okie dokie. Let's go back to our spreadsheet. And passenger. We need to make sure we change to this passenger spreadsheet. Now notice here's where they want us to put those spark lines. They've already got a little place picked out for us. And when we do graphs in Excel, we start by selecting. Now your simulator did this slightly differently. There's always more than one way to do things in Microsoft products. I'm going to begin by selecting this area where I want the spark lines to show up. Okay, there's many ways to do this, but this is the way I'm going to do it. I've selected M5 through M10. Then I'm going to go to Insert, much like I would a graph, but spark lines are a little bit graph charts. Spark lines are a little bit further over, so here's spark lines, and here is the one for a line. So notice that it already has filled in the location range because I started out by having that selected. Now it's saying what data? Well, I'm going to start from B5. Now dragging across this can start to get a little complex. I certainly could. There's no reason not to do that. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in B5, colon, which is the 2 dots, meaning through, L10. Once I've got that in there, I'm going to click OK. Isn't that really cool? Now I'm keeping those selected, but notice that instead of having to look through each and every piece of data, that this spark line very quickly shows me that's an upward trend. Well, I'm going to click away so you can see that's an upward trend. Or this one started really high and then it fell low and then it went high. Now I want you to notice one other thing about these spark lines that I believe they're going to have us fix in just a moment. Notice that the one that goes all the way up to $104 million is just about as high in that cell as the one that only goes to $77 million. So the scaling is not representative, okay? It just is showing us a trend. If I start to compare Atlanta to Chicago, it might be a little deceiving because it looks like they're ending high, and indeed they both are ending high. It's just that one is higher than the other one, okay? And I don't get a sense of that, as I'm looking through these. Okay, but we're not done yet. Let's select those and we're going to keep on going. That was step 15. I'm going to save that and let's go back to the instructions. That was step 15. On to step 16. You want to customize the spark lines to point out highs and lows. So show the high and low points in each spark line and then apply black text 1 color to the high point marker in each spark line. Okay, let's go back to our spreadsheet. And they want us to have markers at the high and low point. So notice I have a spark line menu now because these are selected, and here are my markers. I was about to format them and I don't even have them yet. So over here to the side it says I need to show high points. See how it added a little red dot? And I need to show low points, and it added another little red dot. But I've got lots of red dots going on there, and it said that for our high point markers in each spark line we want them to be black text 1. So I still have this selected. Now I can come over here to the marker colors and click on that drop down box, and they asked me specifically about the high point, and here are my colors, and this one right here is black text 1. I'm going to pick that. And I know that that's really hard to see, but the low point is red and the high point is black now. Okay, I'm going to save that. Let's go back to our instructions. That was step 16. On to step 17. On the questions worksheet, getting close to the end. How many more steps? Only a couple more. On the questions worksheet, type the answer to the first question in cell A2. Enter only the airport code. So it says answer the other questions by typing the answers in cells A3, A4, A5, and A6. So let me show you, but I'm not going to tell you the answers. I might help you a little bit, okay? I'm going to point you in the right direction, but here's what the purpose of this particular task is. We're going to use these graphs that we just created to answer management type questions. That's exactly what we need to do. So if I go to my worksheet, and down here at the bottom it says questions, and I'm going to change to that tab, and we've got to answer these questions. So the first question, I'm not going to tell you the answer to all the questions. You're going to do that. It says, which airport had the most passengers for all years 2006 to 2016? Use the airport code in your answer. Well, if I look at the bar chart, this is just showing 2016. They specifically said all years. From 2006 all the way to 2016. And do you see how that information, hopefully that answer is screaming to you? Which one had always the most passengers? So you have your answer. Let's look at the next question. How many airports had fewer passengers in 2008 compared to 2007? So they went down from 2007, they went down to 2008. It said enter a value such as 1 because they're saying how many airports had fewer passengers. Well, I could try to look at all this data. Could try to look at all that. That's a lot to look at. Could look at my bar chart, but again, that's just 2016. I could look at my line chart. Now, I know that 2007 is roundabout in here, and so is there, how many? Well, does this one go down? I don't think so. I can't say the same for that one. I don't know about that one. Okay. I'm not answering it. You need to make your decision. These are management decisions, and you need to make those decisions. What year did JFK start having more passengers than DEN? So remember, JFK is an airport and DEN is an airport. So in what year did JFK have more passengers than DEN? I think we know by now this line chart is very helpful. Well, DEN is this orange one. If you are colorblind, if you are struggling, remember that you can hover your mouse over the line and it will tell you that that's the Denver airport. And the other one was what, JFK? And so we're talking about these bottom two. JFK is the very last line, just in case you're struggling with the colors, and DEN is the second to the bottom line. And the question, once again, I'm sorry, I have forgotten. The question, once again, is what year did JFK basically surpass DEN, right? So again, this is JFK. Okay, so you have your answer there. What year did LAX start having more passengers than ORD? Well, LAX, I told you can hover over, right? This is LAX, this line right here. So in what year did it have more passengers than ORD? Which is this one. Okay, so you get your answer. And then finally, what airport had the second highest number of passengers in 2016? And it says you're going to type in A. Now, I haven't typed any of these answers, but I'm totally making this up. I'm not. Let's just use JFK. JFK. This they want a number 1, 2, whatever. I'm sorry, 26. I'm totally making this up. 2016. But this is where you would type your answers. Is my point. Okay, so you're going to do that to answer all those questions. I've totally made those up because I'm not giving you the answers on here. You can do it. Use these graphs. Answer those questions. So I'm going to give you a moment to do that. I'm going to change off of this page back to passengers, and when you answer those questions and come back, then we'll continue. So we're back. And you're on step number 18. Group the bar chart and the line chart sheets and insert a footer with exploring series on the left side, the sheet name in the center, and the file code on the right on all worksheets. Group the passengers and questions worksheet and insert a footer with the same data. Now change to normal view. Wonder why they would not have us group all of those at the same time. Well, maybe we should do it the way that they said. Okay, first thing is we need to understand grouping. So let's go to Excel. To group, you simply pick the first one, and then you hold your control key down and you pick the second one. Okay, much like picking one range of data and then another. Well, they wanted us to pick the bar chart. That was one chart. And also pick the line chart. Now, if I pick them one at a time, they're not grouped. I pick the first one, I hold the control key down on my keyboard, and I pick the second one. Now see how they both are highlighted? They're both selected. Now you got to be very careful, because whatever you do right now to one is done to both. If you delete something from one, if you type something on one, it will apply to both of them. So they're both selected. We're going to go to page layout. I always just click this expanding thing so I can go to headers and footers, and they wanted us to put that in the footer. Left section, exploring series. Center section, I just pressed my tab key. Center section, the sheet name. Remember, that's this. We've done this many times now. And file name. OK. And OK again. Now, I'm going to save that. So how do I ungroup? You simply click a tab that is not in the group. Another thing that you can do is you can, if they're both selected, you can right-click and you can ungroup the sheets. Okay? Either one of those methods will work. Now they want us to do the same thing. They want us to select passenger, and they want us to group that. I'm holding my control key down and I'm going to click questions. So both worksheets are grouped, and whatever I do to one will be done to the other. So once again, I'm going to, under page layout, open my page setup. I'm going to go to header and footer, custom footer, and they told us to use the same data, exploring series. I tabbed over worksheet and work file. Code on the right side of the, is that what they wanted? I guess that's what they wanted. And insert a footer with the same data. Okay. Click on OK. Click on OK. And they want us to make sure we're in the normal view, which we are. Now, don't forget, these are grouped. And I say don't forget, I have forgotten on very important worksheets. And what you do to one will be done on the other. So if you start typing, then it will happen to everything that's grouped. Okay, so just click on one of your worksheets that's not there. All right. Very last page, step 19 of our instructions. Oh, did I save? Let's save. Step 19 of our instructions. Set page formats for the passenger worksheet. So select legal size paper. We're going to select landscape. We're going to set 0.3 left and right margins and scale to fit one page. Wow, lots going on. Okay, let's go back. We're going to go to the passenger worksheet. They want us to, let's see, select legal size paper. This is where, going to this box, where it's a one-stop box. We're going to just click on this page setup. I want to tell you something about a problem that you might experience on this step. When I come to right here, paper size, and this is where you change the paper to legal, you may initially not see it. In my case, I did not initially see it. And the reason I didn't see it is because my printer, the printer that I'm connected to, does not support legal paper. So it wasn't offered as an option. If you experience that same problem, then what you need to do is go to your printer settings and change your print to PDF. Okay, so if I go to File, Print, you should have an option underneath here. Your printers will be different, but Microsoft Print to PDF, select that. Then you don't even have to print, just use your back arrow. And then when you go back in, you should have that option to print to legal. That's just in case you run into any trouble. Okay, so that was one thing they wanted us to do. They also wanted us to change this to landscape. See how this is kind of a one-stop, this page setup box, one-stop box, landscape. They also want us to go to margins, and they want just the left and right, not top and bottom, and not the header and footer margins, but the left margin they want 0.3. Oops, I need to type that in there. It doesn't want to default to that. 0.3 there. So 0.3 left, 0.3 right. Now I didn't type the header and footer, that just changed. Okay, so, and then they want me to scale. Now let's see, with my scaling, if I go back to page, now you can see it in the back, but if I go back to page, this is where you'll find that scaling option, and they want it to fit one by one. Okay, so with all that, I'm going to click OK. But what did we do again? Page setup. On this one page, we can change to legal. We can change to landscape. We moved over here to the margins where we could change this to left and right, both 0.3. Then we returned to page and we set the scaling fit to 1 by 1. I clicked OK. I'm going to save that. And our last instruction is always to submit. So let me log in just a moment to my IT lab, and I'll submit, and I'll bring you back when I have my result. So I have submitted my assignment, and I am not yet at 100. I'm at a 98%, and I want my full points. But I want to go ahead and confess to something. When I went through to submit my file, I did not check the folder and the file name of the file that I was submitting. And guess what I did? And I did it twice. I submitted my Excel Chapter 2 work rather than Chapter 3. And of course I got a 0. And I said, that cannot be right. And I said, I must have done something wrong. So I uploaded it again and I got a 0 again. And this is where you have to say, it's not the system, it's me. So let me look and see, what did I do? Because I did something wrong. And lo and behold, I did what I always caution you to not do, which is I did not look at the folder, I did not look at the file name, and I submitted the wrong file. So don't do that. So here I am, I have my 98%, and if I scroll down, let's see what I missed. Honestly, this is bringing you in. I have not even fully researched this. Well, I got a lot of these points. I'm just missing a little bit. It looks like in this very detailed step 14 that I must have missed something. So let's just see what I did. Made a mistake somewhere. The line chart, on the sheet line chart, the alt text. Okay, see, this is where you have to really be careful on that alt text. So I'm going to copy that. That was the instructions. And this is where, remember, all Windows computers have Notepad, and I'm going to paste that, including the period, right? Yeah, including the period, and then copy it. So when I fix this, I want to make sure that I do it. That was for the line chart. Okay, so let me go back in. Excel 3, not Excel 2, Excel 3. And this is the line chart. And if I right-click, edit alt text, I must have a typo in here someplace. I'm going to delete that. And paste, Control V is paste. I must have had something not exactly right in there. Let me click away. That could be a lot worse. That's not a bad error. It looks like I answered all my questions correctly because I didn't get any errors on that. And let me go back, and I'm going to submit. View. Let's see what we've got. Those are my first two. See, those, I said, what? And I submitted the wrong file. Oh, look at that. Yay, 100%. I did amazing, and you will too. So thank you again. Again, this is the Excel Chapter 3 Grader. If you are using an older version, I do have the link to that video because, like alt text, there's a couple things that are a little bit different, and I don't have this for every grader. This is just something I happen to have. So anyway, I hope that this is helpful to you. I appreciate you, and remember one final thing I said. It does not mean that you have to be able to right this minute, without ever looking at your book or without ever looking at instructions, be able to recreate all those graphs. It means that you know that they exist. That knowledge is power, and you can recall that you have done it, and you can Google or otherwise look up those steps, and you can do it again. So thank you, folks. I appreciate you. Goodbye.